This week on Africa Weekly, we focus on a base in eastern Mali set up for soldiers joining Operation Barkhane in the Sahel Desert. And we travel to South Sudan, where a lull in fighting has led scores of displaced people to cautiously return home. But first, a summary of the stories that made the headlines this week. Sudan's new military rulers say ousted President Omar al-Bashir, who is wanted by the International Criminal Court on charges of genocide and war crimes, will not be extradited. They also vowed to install a civilian government following talks with all political groups, as protests continued after their overthrow of the veteran president. They also said they would not tolerate breaches of security after protesters defied a nighttime curfew to keep up a sit-in demanding immediate civilian rule. One Sudanese woman, Alaa Salah, was propelled to internet fame earlier this week after clips went viral of her leading powerful protest chants against al-Bashir. Demonstrators are also calling for an end to multiple conflicts in the country, which have pushed Sudan even further into poverty. Meanwhile, Pope Francis on Wednesday kissed the feet of South Sudan's warring rivals, President Salva Kiir and rebel leader and former Vice President Riek Machar, during a retreat at the Vatican aimed at finding a path to peace. Algerian lawmakers selected Upper House Speaker Abdelkader Ben Salah as the country's first new president in 20 years. 77-year-old Ben Salah, a close ally of Bouteflika and key figure of his regime, pledged to organise a transparent presidential election within 90 days, as laid out by the constitution, which also bars him from running. But demonstrators vowed to keep up their rallies and marches, calling for a new transitional framework that's committed to deep reforms. A video released on Wednesday purportedly shows members of Libya's Khalifa Haftar's self-proclaimed Libyan National Army firing bullets near a burning vehicle outside a barracks in Al-Zizia, south of Tripoli. Libya has been riven by division since the NATO-backed overthrow of dictator Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, with various armed groups and two parallel governments vying for territory and oil wealth. Haftar's forces, who are pressing an assault aimed at taking the capital from the UN-backed Government of National Accord, appear to be advancing on two fronts, from the south and southeast of Tripoli. Rwanda began 100 days of mourning on Sunday, 25 years since the country's genocide, during which more than 800,000 people were killed. President Paul Kagame started off a week of commemoration activities by lighting a remembrance flame at the Kigali Genocide Memorial, where more than 250,000 victims are believed to be buried, mainly from the Tutsi people. Several European leaders participated in a march the same day, along with Kagame, who praised the unity that exists amongst Rwandans today.
Rwanda became a family once again. The arms of our people, intertwined, constitute the pillars of our nation.
Suspected Somali al-Shabaab jihadis killed two Cuban doctors Friday in northeastern Kenya and killed their police protection officer. The two doctors and their guard were on the way to work in the town of Mandera, where they were attacked. The doctors form part of a group of about 100 Cubans who arrived in Kenya last year to help boost health services.
A military base under construction around 100 kilometres from Gao in eastern Mali, where thousands of soldiers will join Operation Barkhane before being deployed in the Malian Gourma, close to the border with Burkina Faso. A Malian company is drilling for water, a top priority for this military base, although today no one is taking a shower because the water tanks are empty.
Well, here we are. This is an area with field showers, field toilets and a few sinks. The base will grow as it is developed, but it's still more than enough for good, hardy soldiers who like to be on the ground.
Before becoming fully operational in the Gourma, a helipad has to be built. While waiting for work to be completed, Chinook helicopters land on the fringes of the camp, everything is under tight surveillance. For the past 18 months, Operation Barkhane has been active in an area close to the border between Mali and Niger, mostly against the Islamic State in the Greater Sahel group. The Gourma region is considered a sanctuary for several armed groups.
These border areas are obviously the places most sought after by terrorists to carry out their actions. There's no better way to move from one to the other and find refuge than in a border area. So in terms of being effective, the Gourma for us ticked all the right boxes.
Located on the RN16 road, which stretches from Bamako to Gao, Gossi is an economic hub that hosts a large weekly livestock market. Operation Barkhane's teams have been patrolling the shopping street since mid-January.
Our objective here is to enable the population to go about their daily lives while pursuing our fight against terrorism. Since Gossi is the region's economic hub, armed terrorist groups, like everyone else, need to supply themselves, and so they try to take advantage of everything Gossi has to offer to get those supplies. It is our priority here to prevent them.
The military's presence has led to the reconstruction of the local water wells. But first, they had to deal with some unwelcome guests.
The snakes had naturally taken up residence, so it took a lot of work for us to get rid of them. We had to continuously pump the water out before we could carry out the work.
It's been a useful way in winning the confidence of the local population, a mission that will take time, as the balance of power in this part of Mali remains complex.
Back home after 5 years in exile in neighbouring Sudan, Joel Deng, her husband and their 5 children fled South Sudan's second city of Malakal to escape the atrocities ravaging the country in 2014.
People died, lots of them. People could literally walk on dead bodies across Malakal.
Her family has sought refuge in Udia in the northeast of the country, a quiet village on the border with Sudan and Ethiopia. Refugees from across the country are staying here, waiting to see if the peace deal holds before returning to their homes.
We were being killed in Juba. We were shot at by people we didn't know at around 3 a.m. They burned down houses, killed our kids.
It's the first time since 2015 that a peace deal has lasted in South Sudan. The power-sharing deal will be the third attempt to reconcile Salva Kiir and his opponent, Riek Machar. Their rivalry kicked off a civil war in 2013 that left around 400,000 dead and nearly 4 million displaced. In this camp in Juba, residents say they are waiting for the formation of the unity government that's meant to be taking place next month.
When the peace comes, everyone wants to go back home, where there shall be no killing or beating. Then we can return home and stay in peace. That's all.
Everyone's waiting to see if Riek Machar returns to Juba as planned in May. A prior peace deal collapsed just months after his return in 2016, sparking even worse violence.
We should be further along, and we're getting a little concerned that the momentum is starting to slow. And momentum slows, frustration sets in, might lead to anger, and then who knows after that.
But aside for some small gestures, such as the freeing of opposition prisoners, progress so far has largely stalled.
Cannabis enthusiasts attend an expo for all things marijuana in Cape Town. In September, South Africa's highest court legalised the use of cannabis by adults in private places, as well as growing marijuana for private consumption. This week saw the first phase of the Marathon des Sables in the Sahara Desert of southern Morocco. The ultramarathon is one of the toughest in the world, with competitors running 250 kilometres over 6 days in temperatures regularly reaching 50 degrees centigrade. The marathon wraps up on Friday. That's all from us at Africa Weekly. Until next week.